So you're considering moving right here to Houston, Texas, but maybe you're considering a move to Austin as well. Well, in today's video, I'm going to talk about just that. My name is Kyler Ferris, and I am born and raised here in the Houston area, but I actually lived in Austin for several years. And so in today's video, I am going to walk you through some of the nuances and some of the differences between Austin and Houston, because if you are watching this and you're coming from another state, you've narrowed it down to Texas, but there are some serious differences between what's going on in Austin and what's going on right here in Houston, Texas. So I'm going to come at it with facts, but I'm also going to come at it with my personal spin because I've lived in both, I've sold real estate in both, so I really am an expert on both cities. So let's get after it right now. So before we dive into the hot topic of Houston versus Austin, if this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living here in Houston, Texas, then don't be shy. Give us a call, shoot us a text, send us a quick email. That way we can help you make a smooth move right here to Houston, Texas. My name is Kyler Ferris, and our team, that's what we do. So let's dive into it. Houston versus Austin. So I've lived in both. I currently live in Houston. I've been back here about 4 years. But prior to moving back home with my wife, I was living in Austin, Texas, and I spent 5 years in Austin, and I absolutely loved it. There were very few things that I disliked about Austin, but the reasoning behind my wife and I's move is something that you might be considering in your move as well. And so for us personally, before we get into some of the differences, we decided to move back to the Houston area. That's where I was from. My wife wasn't, and we met in Austin. And so we decided to move back here for a few reasons. The big one was going to be affordability. The other one was going to be family. It just seemed a little bit more family oriented in the suburbs of Houston than in the heart of downtown Austin. They just provide different things. And so that's why we moved. But I've sold real estate in both. And so there are some nuances between the two, but overall affordability in Houston is a little bit better. And so that was one of the reasons that we moved here as well. So let's dive in. So the first thing we want to talk about is going to be location. So the location of Austin is a little bit more central to Texas. Houston, you're closer to the coast. And so location is going to affect two things primarily. It's going to affect the actual geography. So what the actual land looks like, and then it's going to affect the climate as well. So whenever we're talking about geography, they're very different. So in the Houston area, Houston is very flat. It's coastal. Now, as you work your way further north into Houston, you have some geography changes. So you start to get into a lot of pine forests. They've got the National Forest up north of Houston. Whereas Austin, what you're going to have, in my opinion, I prefer Austin's geography. I'll just throw that out there and I'll say that. Austin, to me, is prettier. It's the hill country. It's a little bit more arid of a climate. It's a little bit drier. You don't have pine trees as much there, especially as you head out west of Austin. If you head east to Bastrop, there's still some pine trees. So very pretty, but you head out west of Austin, you get these gorgeous rock bottom, clear lakes, awesome boating opportunities. You get cliffs, you get different architecture, you get rolling hills. It's very nice. So Austin, geography-wise, I prefer, and then it's going to affect the climate too. So Austin tends to be more of a dry heat, whereas Houston is more of a humid, sweaty, moist heat. It's just not good here when it's hot and humid. So so that's one of the big differences. Both cities are large cities. Now, Houston is significantly larger, both in size and area, but also population. Austin is was really kind of a smaller Texas city until just a few years ago when it really popped. Everybody started to move there. All the tech companies started to move there. So, whereas Houston's been big for as long as I can remember. So yeah, location, geography, climate, and then let's talk about the vibe of the city. So what was really cool about Austin, Austin just seemed very lively. They've got ACL, the music festival. They got South by Southwest. There just always seems to be something going on in Austin. Now, there is that culture in Houston too, but it seems like Austin was a little bit more revolved around music and art and film. Houston seems to have more activities revolving around sports. You've got larger sports teams here in Houston. You also have the rodeo here in Houston, which is a really fun event. So they just have different feels, different vibes. Austin kind of gives off a more like hipster, young professional culture, even though, you know, you can find that in Houston as well. Both are going to have really great nightlife if that's what you're looking for. I would say this. I would say, you know, you have to draw a difference between the inner city of Austin and Houston, and then the suburbs, because they're gonna be different regardless. But I would say that the suburbs in the Houston area are a little bit more geared towards family friendly. As you've seen in some of our other vlogs, they've got these big master plan communities here in the Houston area that aren't quite as common in Austin. There's still a few, but here it just seems like these developers are building these massive family-oriented communities with family events, and they're more affordable. You know, the same home in Austin that costs $900,000, you might be able to get here for $600,000. Also, too, you know, now that the market's slowed down a little bit, you're going to have an opportunity to buy in either market. But there was a minute there where it was very difficult to even attempt to buy a home in Austin unless you had all cash and were ready to close yesterday. It got insane there for a minute. So tons of different housing options. I can't say that the architecture is better in one or the other when it comes to the inner city. I will say, out of all the home options, I think Austin has cooler architecture. In the suburbs, you get it's just a different style. You get more like a hill country Austin stone options, whereas I don't know, it's just personal preference, but you get a little bit more country farmhousey around the Houston area, which is nice. I don't mind it, but I prefer Austin's trendy architecture. They've got cleaner lines on some stuff. And then, like I said, I mean, you can find that in Houston, like if you're in the mix or in downtown Austin, but I feel like there was more of it in Austin. You know, some of the homes I sold in Austin, I just, design-wise, I thought were a little bit cooler. So those are just kind of my personal differences. So affordability here in the Houston area, hands down, it's more affordable. For me, it was important to have a more family-oriented environment to raise kids in. That was one of the other reasons we moved back here. And I feel like that's a little more of a Houston thing. Not to say you can't find it out in Round Rock or Pflugerville or some of the suburbs of Austin, but inner city Austin it didn't put off a family-friendly vibe per se. Things to do, tons of things to do in both. Like I said, a big part is going to be kind of like whether or not you're more into sports versus kind of the arts, music, film. Austin has more lake options that are close by, so like boating and stuff's a little more accessible. You have them here in the Houston area, but there's really only 3 major lakes here. But where Houston wins is Houston has the coast. So if you like going bay fishing, a lot of my friends do that, or you just want to go down to the beach, you don't have to hop on a flight to the east or west coast. You can actually just, you know, drive on down to Galveston. It takes you, depending on where you live, an hour, and you're down at the beach. And so those are some of the differences. That's why I chose to move here to the Houston area. I know this is a little bit more of a personal video, but if you ever have questions about the differences, just know I've lived both, and I also know Dallas too, which we'll get to in a different video. That's where my father lives. So we really do want to be a resource for y'all as y'all are watching our videos online, to really make sure that Houston is the right fit for you and your family. So like we say, if you have any questions, give us a call, shoot us a quick text, or send us an email, and we will help you make a smooth move right here to Houston, Texas.